This is going to be a very straightforward video where I'm going to disclose in general terms exactly how people wake up. And I think I'm qualified to do that because over the last 5 years, over 1,000 people have woken up while they were talking to this unit, while they were in session with this unit. The unit did not wake them up. Fred did not wake them up. Not even God woke them up. They just came to see that they were already awake. But in order to see what you are and what your true nature is, you have got first to see what your true nature is not. You got to find out what you're not. And I know how frustrating that is. I was a seeker for 24 years. So I've actually, that's interesting, this year with 12 years. And so there has been conscious awakeness flowing through this body for half as long as there was seeking consciousness, confused consciousness functioning through it. And all the years before that, before I was about 30, it was all money and girls. I never thought about anything else. And after it was 30, it was mostly money and girls until I was about 50. So, and I can't deny that those things don't have their own appeal to me even now. And I know that's disappointing coming from a spiritual teacher, that I am still actually not just awakeness, but I'm also a human being. And see, that's your true nature. You're not just awakeness. You are awakeness, but you're not just awakeness. Your experience will be that you are also a human being. And I'm not going to tell you that that's fundamentally true, because it's not. But that is our experience. And that's close enough for me. My experience, and when I say my, I'm speaking as awakeness. But my experience is that there is still this play going on. This is the local place where I have this localized attention. I have it everywhere else, but I don't. This unit can't see what's going on everywhere else because it's busy seeing what's going on here. But I can see everything else because I'm everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And every sentient being around the world, no matter what it's doing, there is a localized awareness of it. And that localized experience is me as much as this one is. The unfocused field of awareness. But you have to see that you're not this body. You're really, really, really not this body. You're not, well, you're not anybody, pun intended, but now I'll say you're not anybody, 2 words. Yet you're everybody. I mean, 2 words again. You're everybody. You're every tree. You're every glass. You're every breath. You're every person. Including the one that's watching this. See, it's not just the one that's studying. Yes, there's conscious awakeness over there. And in some cases, it's going to be conscious awakeness that's looking back, if you will. But in most cases, there simply will not be. And one of the reasons for that is that we have been lost in mysticism. I'm just telling you the honest to God truth. Look, my house looks like a museum. I've got candles, I've got incense, I've got statues, I've got stuff on the wall, icons on the wall. I've got pictures of teachers. I've got books. I've got, just look at this setup. I mean, I'm a guy from South Carolina, but I'm trading on this Chinese background thing because it's marketing. And that seems very, very hard, I understand. But there's nothing about the truth that is Eastern, and there's nothing about the truth that is Western. The truth is beyond both. I would have to say that by and large, the Eastern community has been much, much, much more effective at coming to see the truth and establishing methods whereby the truth can be seen. There are methods like Zen, and there are methods like Sufism and mystical Judaism and Christianity and of course Hinduism, my lord, and just general Buddhism that's not Zen. There are all these very and there are others, but all of these paths that we've had for thousands of years. But notice that we're not doing anything else the way that we did it thousands of years ago. We're not trying to do it the way we did it thousands of years ago. If I want to go to the market, I take my car and I walk just because my ancestors did. If I want to give a talk, I don't go to the top of a mountain and yell. I come on the internet and just talk freely. I utilize the technology that's available. It's 2018. And it's a common world now. Eastern and Western, it's getting harder and harder to tell those things apart. Because there are people in India trying to live like Americans, and Americans are trying to live like Indians, right? And it's the same thing with the Japanese, right? I respect those cultures. But the teachings that we've brought from them are chock full of those cultures. Chock full. So in one way, the culture is an encouragement, but in another way, the culture is an impediment. And what I'm telling you is, if you have hit upon this video, look carefully to see if that's your path. Just look very carefully. Because this is a pathless path. It is just in terms of awakening. There's some clearing afterwards. It's the greatest job in the world. Nobody wants to graduate from that job except for ego. I have not graduated from clearing. I'm just on the same path you are. And today I'm a little further up the mountain, but if you are tomorrow, I will grab your rope and I will grab your hand. I'm perfectly willing to follow you. All I want is the truth. And I want the truth any way I can get it, and the only thing I care about is what works. I want to know what works. I want to know what works consistently. I want to know what works reliably and predictably. And I can tell you that this teaching does that. And the first thing that it does, which is, I understand there's been neti's been around for thousands of years, but we just go past that. Most of us, maybe in some of us may go deeply into that. But we can even go deeply into that and still be trying to wake up the wrong one, so to speak. Who am I? Who am I? If Fred does that, I mean, Fred will start out doing it. The Fred Ness will start out doing, but if the character Fred does that, insists on being the one who does that, it may never help him. It's awakeness that has to see Nettie, not Fred. See, people think that I'm going to wake up that character, but I'm not. I'm going to help them see through that character. It's a shift. Sometimes it's really profound, and sometimes it's subtle, and it makes no difference which way it is. It's the same thing. The waking up process is a distraction. Everybody that doesn't have a big explosive awakening is dying to have one, and most people who've had a big explosive awakening, like me, will find themselves confused for years because they've confused the vehicle with the message, the vehicle with the contents. I should say it's not really just a message. We have to see what we're not. And we can't go about this in a haphazard way. It has to be done in a very precise way. You have to ask the right questions. The questions that I ask have been honed over thousands of sessions. I mean, both in clarity and awakening sessions. They're very, very precise. And they don't tell you about enlightenment. They don't tell you about your true nature. They help you see it yourself. See, what's seen through these eyes, who cares? It's what's seen through your eyes that counts. Look, my head is on the block every day and has been for 5 years. 5 years ago, I put up a little thing on my website that said, if you want to wake up, call me. As ridiculous as that was. And the Book of Undoing came out, and a whole lot of people decided they wanted to talk to me. And a whole lot of people got their money's worth. I get email from them every single day. Doesn't mean all of them are abundantly clear right now, but all of them do know something that they did not used to know. They've just forgotten who it is that knows it. And not all of them have forgotten that by any means. Lots and lots of brightly awake beings out there. I've got students all over the country, all over the world who are, well, some of them are teaching. So we have to see what we're not. We're not this body, and most importantly, we're not the character. There's no Fred Davis that's going to wake up, because there's no Fred Davis. But I can tell you that until the cows go home, and you've already heard it, and you already know it. Telling you about it as charming as it can be, and it can sometimes induce, something of a peak moment to be in discussion about this, or hear a teacher talking about this, or whatever it can. But very rarely is it going to actually wake somebody up. And then it's always going to have been by surprise. Now, I must tell you, I am surprised every time somebody wakes up in front of me. Every single time. But I can tell you that one did yesterday, one did the day before, and one did the day before that. Every time I was surprised. You can't get used to it. It's just the most incredible thing in the world. And watching myself wake up, because that's it. I have one client, folks. Me. I is my client. There's only one I. I can say that I am this I. Just by reflexive, I went to the body, didn't I? But I don't mean this. not the body. I'm not the character. I'm something else entirely, and that's what you are, because we're the same thing. We're the same thing. I'm not the body, I'm not the character. So I can promise you that virtually everything that you're doing as a seeker, and I did it too, God bless, but virtually everything you're doing is taking you further and further away from the truth. I will tell you that the very first step that any seeker takes, it's a step away from the truth. That's the truth. Every spiritual seeker's story begins with a step away from the truth. And although it may move closer because of context, because of understanding, because of experiences and this and that and the other, what you're actually doing as a doer is not working for you. And you can't do stuff as a non-doer, so no point in trying. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing that can be done. It just means there's nobody to do it. Things happen. Things happen. They appear to happen through these bodies. That's the play. That's the story. It's not the truth. Seeing what you're not brings the mind into compliance. It takes the mind out of this resistance that's been going on over there forever and went on over here forever. And there was resistance for 24 years prior to this awakening, and there was resistance after this awakening too. It's a little seeking too, but don't tell anybody. There is confusion in post-awakening. But man, the freedom. But I don't want to give you I don't want to sell you anything. I don't want to tell you. The reason you want to wake up is because you can't not want to wake up. That's why. I don't need to sell you on anything, because if you're not genuinely driven to wake up, what are you doing here? Right? Go do something else. Go find something else. Really, take up a hobby. It will be much more rewarding than the seeking hobby. What's happening over here now is not a hobby. And it didn't come by way of practicing my hobby. Some hobby, any hobby. It didn't come by way of practice. It wasn't because of the meditation that I did. It came via inquiry, but it wasn't like I was in some kind of because I used to do inquiry sessions with myself all the time, and it was not in one of those. Those helped, but it wasn't in one of those. Just reading a book. Author asked a question, and I went to actually go see if I could answer that from the truest place that I could. Boom, awakening occurred. But that was because I had already come to be disgusted with this life story and everything to do with it. I wanted nothing more to do with the story. I would have committed suicide, but I couldn't because of my girlfriend, and almost all of you have heard that story. I'm not going to repeat it here. But hopefully this is going to reach some people who have not heard that story too. Because what I want to tell you is that what interests me in how people actually wake up is that what interests me is what works. It's what works. It's not Eastern, it's not Western. It's not new, it's not old. It's beyond any opposites. Awakeness wakes up itself is how that happens. It turns out that it uses this mechanism and this teaching to do it in a reliable, predictable way. I have no idea why. To tell you that it does. piercing questions, the very skillful piercing questions, piercing. I mean, they go beyond the objections of mind. They are directly going from awakeness to awakeness. I mean, so is this conversation for that matter. But this in a more intense, sessions would be in a more intense form. After you have found out what it is that you are not, which is probably 2/3 of any awakening session, close to it. It's not quite. Well, usually. Sometimes it's more than 2/3, but usually it's, people will usually wake up in something under an hour. So, but a good bit of, but all of that time is really spent on seeing what you're not. Once you see that, when I say you, I'm talking about awakeness. I'm not talking about that Bob sees the truth. Awakeness is what comes to see the truth, because there is only awakeness, therefore there's nothing else that could discover it. It simply must notice itself. I cannot make anybody wake up, but I can help people wake up to an amazing degree, to a degree that it would look like from the outside looking in that I can do it, right? And there's no I here. But even awakeness, which is what wakes awakeness up, the only thing that can wake awakeness up is awakeness. Conscious awakeness notices that on the other side of this, what happens with me is that there's conscious awakeness here, and it notices that this particular client is still as awake as I am over here, but they don't have any knowledge of that, any real knowledge of that. And if you don't know that your awakeness, that you are awakeness, then your experience will be that you're a human being that is not awake. And that's what you're trying to wake up, is the human being that's not awake. And you will never in a million years wake up any human being, period. Nobody has ever woken up a human being, and no human being ever woke up. No exclusions. I know this, and you can ask whoever your spiritual teacher is. You can ask them, and they will agree with that. And as long as they're authentic, they can't not agree with that. Once you've seen what you're not, then introducing awakeness to what it is just so much easier. You've got the clamoring down. You've got clamoring down, and you've got curiosity up. You, by nature, awakeness, are a very curious being, I'm going to say, just for the just because we're going to language it. You're really beyond being and not being. But we'll call you being. Gotta call you something. You have to come to see what you are, but you can't. But telling you doesn't do any good at all, or rarely does it do any good. If it does do any good, it's only because it sets something off. It's been utilized as a pointer. It's not that the words. This is not about information. That's what I saw 5 years ago before this teaching began. Was that it wasn't information that we needed, it was presentation. We didn't need any new information. We got all the information that we needed the first time we read a modern non-dual book that was written by an authentically awake being, so to speak, or someone who could remember enough about it to write a book and claim that it was still going on, but whatever. There's not anything wrong going on here. I'm not throwing stones at anybody because there's not anybody but me. Coming to see what you actually are. We have been told, we have been taught, and I'm not saying it wasn't true for centuries, but I'm telling you it's not true today unless it is for you. If it is for you, fine, go ahead. I have no interest in actually trying to convert anybody to anything. I don't need to. This teaching cannot exist unless there are people who need it. And there cannot be people who need it and this teaching not exist. So it came unto its own, it just happened. I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't even understand really how it works. I'm explaining to you how it works, and I don't even know how it works. What I'm doing is I'm showing you all the breadcrumbs. But it just stuns me that they lead to the witch's house every time. Seeing what you are is so easy. Once you've seen what you're not, and once you're introduced to yourself knowledgeably, skillfully, carefully, patiently, or impatiently if that's what's required. But if you're properly introduced to yourself after you have been properly unintroduced, after you have properly seen through what is not true, then guess what? Truth is what's left. If you look at my books, the book of undoing, the book of unknowing, the book of unveiling, un. This is a spiritual unteaching. I swear to God it is. It's a spiritual unteaching. It's my job to unteach everything that you know, that you think you know about spirituality in 90 minutes. And then you can claim back any parts that you want to reclaim. And I'm not saying that everything that you know is invalid, but I'm saying that the way you know it is invalid if you're not if you're not consciously awake right this minute. And how do we do that? Questions. It's questions. It's all questions. Questions are what wake you up. You don't need answers. You need questions. Woke up a guy last week and he said, "Oh God, I just love your questions." That's all I got. I can't explain what I don't understand. I don't have answers. Man, I got some questions that will invoke, not just provoke, but that invoke awakenings every day, time and time again. We see what we're not, and then we see what we see what we are. We see what we are. One of my students this week, woman that's been with me, we figured out 3 years. She's been awake for 3 years, but she's been not clear for all 3 years. But she woke up initially with me 3 years ago, and now she's quite clear. And she told me, she said, this was Joyce, for those who know, and she said most teachers talk about enlightenment. You actually show it to us. You take us and lead us to it. That's the difference. So if this sounds like an infomercial, I can't say it's not. But what the hell am I going to do to come out? And if I have a way to help you wake up, and my job here is to help people wake up, why would I come out with stuff that's come out here with anything other than what is the most efficient. And the way it works is one-on-one. I couldn't come out and give you a video of an awakening session and have it wake everybody up. I've got books that are on the way that at least used to do awakening sessions, and I woke up hundreds of people using those techniques, but I don't, if you will, they are techniques. There are no techniques. Yes, there are. There's no method that will do. Yes, there is. I beg to differ. And I beg to differ sitting on a mountain of evidence. So now I can see I'm getting all riled up. Probably be better for me just to go ahead and close now. I think I've said all I can say, and I probably said it 40 times. So at any rate, it's great to be with you. I hope to be back with you soon. Video guys in the house, you'll see me. See you later. Bye-bye.